want to give a couple shout outs and talk a little bit about the film, then introduce my panel. Is Suzanne Lerner here? She said she was coming. I don't know if she is. She wasn't. Okay, because she's one of our backers of the film. And I also, this fantastic song everyone just heard at the end of our film, Mindy Jones, who's the composer and singer. This is basically the LA premiere of the film. It came out in November. I just want to talk just a bit about, as I said, we made the film before the election. We thought it was going to be about a different moment. And then afterwards, in the moment that we were in, Tiffany's company, Let It Ripple, that we did this film through, was a nonprofit. And they use short films as tools for social movement building. And they had done something similar to what we're doing with 50/50 Day with a different project of theirs called Character Day, where they were trying to get the idea of character development into the cultural conversation. And they've been doing it for 3 years. And while they were doing that, Tiffany and Sawyer and I were making this film. And with a very different plan for what this film was going to be. And suddenly after the election, we all got together the day afterwards and said, oh my God, we're doing this, you're doing this thing with Character Day. We need to do a 50/50 Day. We need to do a day where we really talk about what it's going to take to get to a more gender equitable world. And we felt at that moment, how can we do this? They had a model that they'd been doing with Character Day. Then let's see if we can make that happen for 50/50 Day. So just a little bit about, as my sister Karen, who I speak to 4 times a day, said to me on Friday, what is this thing, 50/50 Day that you're doing? Is this a thing? What is this? So, what's this thing that we did? And then suddenly in Time magazine today, there was like the 3 things you need to know about today. Comey, somebody died that I guess is famous, and there's 50/50 Day. Obscure international day of global recognition. I was like, okay, we just created a new fact, so we'll take that. But what this is we provided basically a creative toolkit for businesses, schools, homes, anywhere where people can gather to show the film. We made discussion guides. So everyone on your seats, you have a card. That card is part of a thick discussion guide where we look at gender equity from all different aspects: business, home, culture, politics, identity. So we'll get to those cards later. So you can actually create a conversation about the many ways that gender impacts different parts of our culture, kind of an intersectional approach to it. So we have this, we have the discussion guide, and then we programmed a global Q&A that was all online with leaders in the field of gender equity. We spoke to 2 of the presidents that you saw at the end of the film, the president of Malawi and the former president of Malawi, the former president of Iceland, among many, many others. We've actually been doing interviews since 5 a.m. So every half hour we had another interview. And so we put this out there, we put this toolkit out there. We had full school districts signing up. Intel did events at all of their global campuses. Facebook did an event at their campus today. And we ultimately had 11,000 events in all 50 states. And what was really important for us, while the film was really about the past, present, and future of women in power, this idea of gender equity and moving the conversation forward, we actually didn't say women's 50/50 Day. We just said 50/50 Day, and it was really important for us that this not be in the women's space, that this be in the everybody space, and that this was happening at businesses, this was happening at schools. We had a number of men on our panels today. It was important that, we have Eric, our mayor, out there, the men that are really stepping out front on this issue and are really partners with this, and men that are changing what those expectations are around masculinity and what men's place is in the world today and moving forward. So did I get done? Did I cover it all? I think I covered it all. So yes, and thank you again to Neuehouse and Lynette, who's been my woman on the ground today with me in the thick of it, Mona, all my family that's here. So on that's kind of about 50-50, and our plan with this is actually to do it for the next 4 years. And then hopefully we won't need to, because it's all going to be done. But I actually spoke with a congresswoman today, Congresswoman Maloney, who is out of New York, and she reintroduces the ERA every year on the floor. Every year she brings it up, and we had a conversation today. And apparently, which I was unaware of, all of these changes that are happening, or potential changes to healthcare right now, if the ERA was passed, it would actually be unconstitutional for women to pay more for healthcare than men. It just, you couldn't do it. Pregnancy couldn't be a pre-existing condition. It would be unconstitutional. And all of the conversations apparently that are going on right now about healthcare, there are no women in those conversations at all. So with 50% of the population, you think we get a little bit of say. But that, that's looking back, or that's looking nationally, locally, things are very different. So on that note, I'm very excited to bring up our panelists. So Nancy Cohn is an award-winning author, historian, public speaker, and leading national expert on gender and American politics. She's the author of 4 books, including Breakthrough, The Making of America's First Women President, and Delirium, The Politics of Sex in America. And Arceli Campos, who served as the president of the City of Los Angeles Commission on the Status of Women, where she helped the city set its strategy, implementation, and plans to make a meaningful impact on the city. And as we saw from the First Lady and Mayor, you've done an excellent job. She's currently executive director of the Miguel Contreras Foundation, a nonprofit organization with back-to-basics approach to labor and organizing. And this is all being broadcast on Facebook Live as part of the Q&A, and a number of our panels today around the country and around the world will also broadcast. Thank you, women, for joining us today. So, Nancy, you're going to speak a little bit from a historical perspective, and Arceli, you're going to be able to speak really about our current situation now. But I'd love to hear from you. What does this moment in America look like right now, beyond the headlines?
Well, let's start with the headlines.
Okay.
So it's around 10:30 Eastern Time. I think it's safe to say that Trump is in his bathrobe. Sorry to put that image in your mind. But I think we can step back from the constitutional crisis that we are facing at this moment and look forward. And I think I love this film. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Tiffany, if you're out there listening. It's really inspiring. And so where are we right now? I think, it's a very complex and complicated moment. It's a scary moment. It's an inspiring moment. I think we're at a hinge point. And many of us expected, I certainly did, I wrote a book about it, expected a woman president this year. I certainly think that America is ready for a woman president. We can get into some of the debates about women in politics face in the question and answer period if you want. But I think, ironically and surprisingly, where we're going to see the change coming is from this upsurge of women that we saw at the women's marches, that we see in the resistance movement. I think really people didn't expect that we could elect a certifiable misogynist as president of the United States, and realize that even if they didn't think women's leadership was that important before, realized that the stakes of this are very high. So one of the most inspiring true facts of the recent months is that more than 12,000 women have stepped up to run for political office. Absolutely unprecedented. And so when you take that, plus the grassroots movement of hundreds of thousands of women wanting to restore democracy to this country, I think we're going to have a big surge forward in this, getting to gender balanced world.
Oh, Sally?
This moment. First house, thank you, in this present moment. This beautiful film. It's very inspiring to be here with you all today on 50/50 Day, especially in this very uncertain time. For me, it's an intersectional moment, and what probably inspired me the most about the, besides the big numbers of the Women's March here in LA, was just this real surge of women's leadership. And it's something we've all known, but in a lot of the work, and with that, it's to create those kind of numbers here in LA, you need a lot of diverse people to come out, including a lot of men. And for me, who's traveled over the past years, I spoke at the UN for the mayor a few years ago. I often encountered this perception that women in LA that weren't the traditional feminist leaders, that there wasn't that feminist movement, the galvanization, like you might see in other places, or this notion that the way we are here in LA is not feminist in a way that was well received. And so for me, it's just such validation for our LA community that what we know is that women in LA slay. And you look at our, yes. And sometimes people look at statistics, and I'm very proud to represent, the Garcetti administration and the city of LA as someone who is very much like the statistics of LA that we often think of as obstacles, single mom, teenage mom, immigrant family, grew up very poor, all those types of, things that I realize over my time doing this feminist work, those are amazing things. And my mom on this Mother's Day, for a lot of folks, Mexican Mom's Day, that is feminism that she displayed and living her life that way and raising me and my siblings, that's beautiful, and that's feminism, and that's what we have in LA. So when you see statistics that show so much inequality and disparity, I'll take a cue from the film, and there is a lot of scarcity to see. There are a need for improvement, but in terms of the abundance that the film was talking about, there is so much opportunity and leadership that's already taking place, and it's about elevating that. And so what this intersectional moment right now gives us the opportunity is to elevate the leadership that we have here in LA.
So could you talk a bit about, this intersectional moment? I know you're working right now, you're coming from the Women's Commission, and now you're working in an organization that is working with immigrants and labor movement. And can you kind of look at that with a bit of a gender lens and talk about how these groups are working together?
Well, we have a really unique opportunity, and I'll say my organization is named after a former head of the LA County Fed, Miguel Contreras, who was known as one of the first labor leaders to bring immigrants into the labor movement. And that, like many movements, labor was one that has a xenophobic history, the racist and sexist history in many ways. And so that was a huge accomplishment. And so the work that we're carrying on is to really intersect with the other issues taking place. And I see, and historians really can tell us best, that this is a time that hasn't really existed before, because the labor movement has not been this progressive when it comes to the intersectional issues of immigration, gender, supporting people in non-traditional spaces in new ways outside of the labor movement as well. And so that's how we kind of intersect. And that's the kind of work we're trying to do, is to support in bringing more folks in or outside the labor movement into empowerment paradigm, whether it's based on their rights as workers, and that's in a new kind of economy that's very disaggregated, or as political leaders who are women and come from not just the maybe leadership of unions, but all the rank and file members, the housekeepers, not just the unions paid staff, and that's a very important shift that this movement will really push. And it's not just about us doing it on our own. It's about this LA community demanding it and making sure that we have the support to implement what we want to implement.
So Nancy, can you speak for a minute about the sticking points in the politics, right? Because we're looking at a potential shift, but the numbers are still 20% women in the House and Senate, and even our LA City Council, which is for elected office, there's only one woman right now, whereas in the appointments we're at gender parity. So let's talk. Can you give us a little perspective?
So there's sticking points to kind of why don't we have parity in politics, but there's also the question of why we don't have equality and parity in culture and the economy and all the other arenas of our life. And they're intimately connected. So, after this election, we might not realize this, that all the public social survey polls, not like election horse race polls, show that the vast majority of men in the United States support gender equality. Young millennials, or millennials up till about the age of 40, men are as concerned about work-life balance as women are. So we have structural impediments to getting to gender equality. And I think the big sticking point is, our priorities. So feminism, women's issues have often been treated as kind of second tier, back burner. They haven't been a priority. And what the global research shows is that that women in elected office make this a priority to a far greater extent than men do. It's very rare for men to make gender equality a priority. Mayor Garcetti is one of the rare figures in international politics, certainly in U.S. politics.
Actually, today during our global Q&A, with one of the many interviews that I've done today, we had Reid Hoffman, who's the co-founder of LinkedIn, and he has a new podcast called Masters of Scale, and they've made a commitment, and they just did it not really thinking they were going to announce it publicly, but they made a commitment to have 50-50 guest booking on their podcast, and they hadn't really thought twice about making that a public announcement until 50-50 Day. They were like, oh, we make it public, we can talk about it on your show. But that notion of actually bringing a certain amount of mindfulness to that activity, right?
Right, exactly. And I do think what we're seeing with so much of the political polarization being around gender, being around, right, women being being a woman is a pre-existing condition in healthcare, Planned Parenthood being defunded, Trump appointing to the position to oversee the Title 10 program, I was 9, right, for providing family planning services, has appointed a woman who has said that birth control does not work, that the pill does not work, right? So with these kind of this craziness and these issues being lifted up, women mobilizing to preserve our democracy, I think we really are seeing in the Democratic Party men realizing that this is a central core issue, not something that can be put to the side. But still, we need women in there. We need all perspectives at the table. We need people who are impacted by public policy, by laws, to be the ones making it. So it's just a fundamental, this is what democracy is. It's representation. And that's one of the reasons we need to get to 50-50 in our politics.
But I think this is something you touched on in one of your books I found so fascinating was that notion of incumbency and the challenges around incumbency. Was it 90% of incumbents actually get reelected? So when you're talking about kind of political change in representative government, we have this big surge now of women running, but they're also running against incumbent seats. So for all of us that are looking to oust some incumbents. But maybe you could speak to that just for.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that we have such low numbers is our political system. Is we do things very differently here than other countries do. Many countries have quotas for elected office, and the parties control who the candidate is. So kind of counterintuitively, we'd have more representation of women, of Latinos, of African Americans, LGBT, if our parties were more powerful and could make a decision within the party. It's time to lift up these voices. Now, this is something that, that's long-term structural change. I don't think that's how we're going to get there. Right now, our best bet is for women to flood the field and people to support women candidates. And this is all happening in the Democratic Party, by the way. The Republican Party needs to get its house in order too, but we'll leave that to them at this moment. First, they need to start a bipartisan commission to investigate their president. I'm sorry, I keep getting distracted with this. So I do think that, where those of us in the room might have influence is letting the elected officials who we know and support or who represent us say, this is a priority for us, for you to open space in the party, to endorse women, to raise money for women, and not necessarily say, that guy, he was my chief of staff, he's the next in line.
So, and I think we have a really unique, a unique position here in Los Angeles, through the work that you've been doing, through the work our city's been doing, our mayor's been doing, to be a model for other cities. And I do think it is, incumbent upon the women and men that are doing this work to be out front about it, right? So looking forward, imagining, how we're going to get there. What do you think are, from both your points of view, some, kind of very specific actions that you think that hopefully won't be? I heard someone on one of the interviews today said it's going to take 100 years to close the pay gap. Like 100 years, really? Okay. Well, we can't wait that long.
There's a lot we can do. So I'll say that I think our constitutional crisis right now, I'm like a lawyer as well, and I think that it has I'm up really late thinking about the rule of law here in the U.S. and it's being premised on representative democracy. And when we have government elected leadership that doesn't represent us, including women, that will erode into a complete failure of rule of law. And so that's dangerous for everyone. So in terms of opportunity, it's thinking about it from my perspective in terms of things that fortify our representative democracy. And for me, there's many things that looks like, but it includes things like commission appointments. That is just one thing of many. But it's something where someone like me, who's not the traditional person who's going to run for office, and is someone who was appointed just out of my 20s. That's a way that, and you look at the median age of women in LA, it's very young. There's one council district we found in this study, the average median age was 23. And so, in Council District 9, current president district. So, and the average income was $14,000 for a female there, working female there. And so you think, how do we get representative democracy and do political training programs for someone in that position, for when that represents so many people in our city and county? And so it's really, from my perspective, it's thinking about there are ways to connect with someone who's 23 and earns very little, and that's because that's a powerful woman. She's a head of, LA has so many heads of household who earn minimum wage and less, and they're ruling and slaying, for the city and for their families. And I really think that there's a lot of political training programs that I always for them about. Neighborhood councils are at 38%. That's a very, hopefully getting higher number. But it's really, there's a lot of recruitment programs. It's really, from our city perspective that the First Lady discussed, it was adding infrastructure on government that now the county is doing as well through a new Women and Girls initiative that Supervisor Kuehl and Solis, really are leading for the county to really say how can we intentionally put the gender lens on infrastructure, meaning how many girls and women are served by parks and recs, what is the pay disparity, and how do we improve those areas. And so we're in a moment where everyone should know that is being done in a way that's never been done before at the city through every single department, including the ones you don't think of, that are women traditional gender equity areas, like transportation or housing. But of course, then you think of homeless women compared to men. Of course, there's a gender lens there. The same thing's happening at the county. How do we improve the fire department from 2% women, which it is right now? And so the point is, it's really through strategic planning, creating the plans that are mandated, as the First Lady talked about, with all the general managers saying this has to be, each department has a strategic plan. Can we add gender lens to those strategic plans? So that's what's being done. That's what the county is doing now with the historic 4 out of 5 female supervisors. And that's a big start. And so where you all fit in is to really be pushing for more of that, to be praising that, to be, I went to that hearing. There was I would love to see more people knowing about these initiatives and informing them, really elevating. In LA, a lot of the cool, activism is done in a really disaggregated grassroots way, and we need to figure out ways through these initiatives to bring that together.
Fantastic. Nancy?
Yes. Yes. So there's a lot of policy work going on, and there are a lot of experts in the city and the county doing that work, and that's great. I guess I want to speak to, assuming most of you aren't city or county employees or elected leaders, I would say, the message of this film, let's start telling a story of abundance. I think we got so kind of deep in the justifiable outrage, the terrible things that, do happen to women, the, extent of sexual violence. All of these things are real and important. But there really has been a cultural shift in this country. We are ready for a gender balanced world. Yes, there are reactionaries, outright reactionaries in this country that are scared of this, and that's what political activism is about. It's what voting and giving money and going to demonstrations and calling your representatives. But I would say, think about this as a story of possibility and opportunity and abundance, that's going to be difficult to get to just because there's so many centuries of accumulated discrimination and inequality. But, if we set our minds to it in all the different areas that we all have interests or talents or skills or expertise, bringing it from every area, I really do think this is possible and even likely in the near future.
Thank you both. This is fantastic. I really appreciate it. Before we do our little Q&A, I would have these discussion cards on your sheets, and I would love you all to look at them for a minute. And this is the interactive portion of the evening. I want you to take a minute and talk with the people. Introduce yourself. You don't know the person next to you. It's like we do this in synagogue. And kind of talk about those two issues on your cards, or compare the different issues that are on your card. There's so many different ones. We have a big poster that you'll see on your way out.